Okay.
I I was actually
All righty. Uh, the old farts. Um, Tonight we're going to talk about something a little bit different. At least start talking about it. We'll see where it goes. And that is, what is government? Um, One of the things that hopefully we'll have time at the end of the discussion to talk about is the different views of what government is based on the parties that are running for president right now. But let's start for the moment with a definition of what government is. I will give you mine, which is since humans and insects and animals and possibly viruses, although nobody's ever asked them, are herd animals, government is how the herd organizes itself. Now, it may organize itself just because it works better, or because people are happier, or to enhance survival. But the point of government is for communities, again, they could be human communities or whatever, to organize themselves so they can get along, so they can hunt better, so they can survive, whatever. And government can be very large, could be all of humanity. The UN attempts to be a government, or it can be as small as a marriage, two people. They interact, they work out rules of how they're going to work together. In general, I think most of the time, important things in a marriage are decided when everybody agrees, more or less. You could have a same family that has children, and those children may be included in the decision making or may not. They may have a vote, they may not. But it's still, how do we organize ourselves? And so that's my idea of government. I know that one of the old farts who was unable to make it tonight saw government as being a way for the community to survive. So they saw it purely in terms of worrying about outside influences as opposed to how do you interact? How do you decide who's cooking dinner tonight? How do you decide what we're eating tonight, etc.? So, um, anybody else got some comments or ideas or disagreements?
that seems all encompassing, and I think it's a good way to start to say it can be as small as two people or as large um, as the UN and um, worldwide, and it could be anything in between, and it survives by um, making some generic rules that everyone can live by, that they've agreed to, and and they have to, I guess, have a common desire to get along with each other.
I'm not sure I agree with that because let's say for the time being that I'm the U.S. Army and I attack and conquer a Native American tribe, and I say you will do X and be at Y and nothing else. Um, the U.S. Army in that case was the government of that particular reservation. And there was no agreement. Well, it was an agreement in the sense that if somebody didn't go along with it, then they took whatever punishment. Um,
I don't think it's a proper place at this time for Bob to be critiquing what Paul just said. I think the
Okay.
purpose was Bob said what he feels, and I think Paul said what he believes. I think Omanad and I should have our say, and then if you want to critique each, you can certainly do so.
Okay, no fact check.
No, no, no.
I'm
Actually,
not saying you're not to fact check. I just think that everybody should have an opportunity to express their opinions without you pulling it apart without that opportunity.
True. Okay.
um, that that your example uh, transitioned from a a government where people agreed to two opposite sides, and it no longer became a government or a consensus of opinion. I agree with you,
Well,
however, that actually I think that it is important to have other points of view on other subjects, on the subjects we talk about. I think that's the way we get a better understanding of the whole thing.
well,
Why don't you go?
I guess quite briefly, without doing any deep thinking about it, I guess I see government as a gathering of individuals who want to accomplish um, various things from safety to for themselves and their fellow individuals to be able to accomplish things uh, to survive for producing food or buildings and an ability of people to set rules and regulations that they can agree upon. I think that's something that Paul touched on. Um, and I mean, there's many different forms of government, but I think in very simplistic terms, that's what I see.
But I also would say that yes, for the current way of current thinking about government is that some individuals will agree to disagree and agree to run a country or a state, and for the benefit of maintaining law and order and make sure the population is defended in a certain way by that, and at the same time there is economic benefit in the running the government. But historically, we didn't have it that way, that there was an agreement to do that, because you had feudal lords deciding what to do, or kings decide what to do, or local smaller feudal lords who had their own serfs, they would decide for them. And you can also then take it to the other side. You had a company town where actually company decided what goes. And so it's kind of historically we were not we it's the government has evolved over time. So at the moment we think of government as a body of individuals who have agreed to provide us the benefit of law and order and economic policy and defense and hopefully some social programs.
Well, I guess what I would just say on that, Oman, and I agree with what you said. At the same time, I'm thinking in terms of what I meant is what the initial purpose of the gathering of these people together were for. And obviously, at some point in time, somebody's probably going to step up either on their own or encouraged by somebody else to be the final person who make those decisions, or and maybe crowned as the king or the emperor or something else, and the grouping having to decide, is that the way they want to be governed? And then it really becomes a question: is in which manner do we want to be governed?
I, I would somewhat disagree with that. Uh, in general, I think that's the way it should be. But I think if you go back to early humanity, probably the initial community was a male and a female, or multiple females as the case may be, and their children. And it was run, in most cases, not all, by the dominant male, the father, if you will. And gradually, as the kids had kids, it grew into a clan, and at some point, they'd capture somebody, or they'd interact with another clan, and they now have relations over there. And they found that it worked out. The more people they had, the better off they were. But I don't think that governments necessarily are any one kind of thing. And because I don't think they're any one kind of thing, the one thing we can, I think, agree on is that they all have a set of rules that most, not all, of the governed accept or tolerate, as the case may be. And once we have something, once we can look at it that way, we can analyze a little bit more about what it is we want and what are the advantages and disadvantages of the 14,527 different ways of organizing. Maybe 28.
I mean, at this time, of course, the current thinking about the democratic way of doing, having a government, by design, it means there will be discussion and rules will be made based on majority. And of course, not everybody will be happy, but at least most of the people will be happy. And there will be some people, 49% of the people who would probably get hurt. And so that's the problem with our system of government. But by and large, the key thing is that hopefully they are thinking about larger good and making rules in a way to provide the benefits that each and every individual can get something out of it, and hopefully provide some kind of defense for the nation that way, so that we're not overrun. And at the same time, because it gets larger and larger, and if you take United States as an example, should then that U.S. government be the policeman of the whole world? So these are that becomes larger issues then, where I don't think we are going there.
Actually, we might at the end. I could see that being something that we really should analyze. But again, until we understand how humans and other beings organize themselves, I think it's a little premature, personally.
Well, I don't see the United States being the leader and dictating to the rest of the world how the rest of the world should behave. We can't even decide among ourselves how we behave. Right now, we're probably the worst state we've been in a long, long time. We have two political parties that are diametrically opposite in their thinking, and it's very regrettable that we can't even agree on what the Constitution should be.
I think you expect that thing to happen in a democracy. If they don't have diverse, if you don't see diverse views, that means it's a monolith, and you don't want that either. That's my 2 cents worth, and I think Chuck is going to take over from there.
No, I was just going to say my 2 cents worth is do we as citizens of in this particular country have the right to question whatever the government says? Do we have that right?
I would think so.
Absolutely.
Or are we expected to follow exactly what they say all the time?
I think you're kind of caught in a bind Florida, for example. Uh, the government says, get out. If you don't get out, you're going to die. That was a quote. In fact, what they're saying is, if you, we can't protect you, we can't save you if things go bad. The difference between a democracy, representative democracy to be more accurate, and a dictatorship is, in a democracy, you have the right to be stupid. People stayed. I have a good friend who stayed in Florida. He did an analysis and said there wasn't any place he could go to that would be any safer than his own home. And he was far enough away from the coast so he wasn't going to get hit with a tidal wave. In a dictatorship, if you don't get out, the police force might drag you out, might shoot you, might cause you to forfeit anything that may be left after whatever disaster is going on. On the other hand, at least you won't have people floating out in the ocean. So these are different approaches, and I think in every situation, the response has got to be a little bit different.
But it still comes back to the question: does the individual have the choice to make that example you're trying to give, Bob? Does a person have the right to make that decision? I'm staying where I am, and that's the way it is.
I don't think individuals have the choice to disregard the common belief, and you don't have the right to shoot your neighbor. You don't have the right to to yell fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire. Those kinds of things.
I think there's a question about whether that's a valid statement or not, but we don't have time to get into that at this point, I don't think. But again, the example that you use as far as shooting somebody, that's in my mind, a totally different issue. That's not what that example that I was trying to pose is. As an individual who you're not threatening somebody, but you're making your own personal decision that with my life, I want to stay where I am. That doesn't, and I'm willing to pay the consequences of whatever that happens. And that's what that person meant when they said, if you stay here, you're going to die. So that person has heard what somebody else may advise to them, but if they still decide that's where I'm staying, don't they have that right to do that? Well, and you're saying no.
No.
Should they, if they do that, should the government have the prerogative to not bother trying to save him when he's in trouble?
Yes. I would say yes.
Okay. Then we define the rules a little bit more than whether you have the right to say no. If I'm in a dictatorship, hell, if I'm trying to cross the street, and a cop says, don't cross the street now, for whatever reason, maybe there's cars coming, maybe they're trying to let somebody back out, whatever reason, and I choose to walk across the street, I'm willing to pay the price. In a dictatorship,
right, there's a consequence to that. Yeah. You may get hit by a car, or you may be arrested.
Right. In a dictatorship, if I don't do what I'm told, I could get shot, and maybe my family could get shot. Why are we talking about
a dictatorship?
Well, no, I'm trying to make the point that you always have a choice. In every situation, you have a choice. So just having the choice doesn't make it a free or not free society. It's just, in a given situation, what are the consequences? In my mind.
Okay.
And one would think that if you were part of the decision that said do or don't do something, that you should be more willing to go along with whatever the decision ended up being, because you were part of it. You had your say. You did or didn't influence other people.
Is Omanat still with us?
Yep.
Yeah, can you see me?
I couldn't, but now I see.
Oh, you couldn't. Okay, now I'm talking. All right. So here I get a chance to talk about what I was wondering is actually is that yes, we have in any society we do have a choice, but
Not in
the
any society,
consequences.
not in all societies.
Yes, no, but the consequences are different.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
Bob is saying, and I agree
Okay.
with that because the consequences in one case maybe a dire consequences, whereas other types of government, the choices the person might get just drowned in the ocean wave, and that's the end of that. That they made a choice. But what I was also going to point out is that the government as government should have the ability to have certain rules set up so that there is a judiciary that can adjudicate when somebody's rights are trampled or somebody is complaining about the government. There should be a judiciary that can adjudicate that. But at the same time, given that under that rule of law, that also should protect us as individuals from somebody else's greed who might want to take over your property. So that's where the government comes in handy actually, and hopefully functions well. And not all the time. Again, that money comes in the way, and John would know that lawyers come in the way, and hopefully they do well. That's it.
Well, that's why we have a judicial system in this country.
Right. And one of the key things about a democracy, representative, whatever you want to call what it is we're trying to do here, is that you have somebody, when Paul and I are fighting, or Chuck and I are fighting, you have another party who listens to the facts and says, okay, this is really what's going on, and oh, here is the law that's applicable. And Chuck and I, or Paul and I, agree when we walk in there that we will abide by this third person's decision, because we don't see them as being on one side or the other. So they're independent, they're nonpartisan. So, and I think that becomes, with any group, a really important thing. Now, who is the arbiter, depends on the group. In early humanity, I was talking about earlier, the adult male was the arbiter. Most of the time, sometimes it was the female. And very often it was the eldest of the clan. They would sit around and they'd talk about what's going on and come to a decision. Not everybody would necessarily agree, but they would say, okay, this is what we think, which is, I think, the beginning of what the court systems ultimately became. So add to that, to the government, is this third organization who just resolves disputes. Because the alternative is that Paul and I start fighting, and if I fight with Paul, I'm going to lose. He's not disagreeing, by the way.
That all depends on what the fight is about. You know, if it's physical, maybe you will lose. If it's intellectual, you'll probably win.
But the one major drawback in the education piece is what if I lose and then I don't like the decision. So who am I going to and then I keep on complaining all the time. And what good is that complaining? And that's where sometimes the trouble comes up, that I don't like the decision, and then I badmouth all the judges, and does that help in the overall scheme of things?
Well, again, it's the rules the rules that we agreed to. If you violate the rules that we agreed to, then the the community punishes you in some way. Um, you look at the Bible. There's rules. You will not commit adultery. If you do, the community, not a judge, not a policeman, the community stones you to death. So if you refuse to be part of the community, at minimum, the community expels you. You may be sitting in the same chair that you were in before, but you lose all the advantages of being a member of the group. At least that's how I feel.
I was actually going to give that same example about the law of the education by the book, which is actually where they can cut off somebody's arm or cut off their head or stone them to death, and then there's no complaint. Although the people will cry and scream because they are being judged, but they have no complaint because the law comes from God, and that's the end of that story. And I'm sure Chuck has something to add here.
A lot of things going through my head, but I'm not sure what I want to comment.
All right. You reserve your time. Let's say that we have a government. It's a government more or less consensual that says we're going to react in a certain way, and we see a certain generic view of the world as being a good place to try to get to, and another generic view of the world as a bad place that we're trying to avoid. Is that a rational way to look at government, particularly our government? And you can say Burlington's government or Massachusetts government or the U.S. or whatever.
I think that, yeah, that's an ideal, but we have, 330 million people and in the United States, and there are very conflicting views from one extreme to the other and everything in between, and you can't get an agreement on the way things are or should be when you have such extreme positions on both sides, and that's a significant problem.
When you have, in my opinion, when you have so many people, 330 million, I think that's somewhere around the third or fourth largest population in the world.
Yeah,
when you're trying to get that many people together to see things, some people may say the same way, that's an impossible, in my mind, an impossibility. You're hoping that there'll be some compromises on people on each side to a certain degree, but hopefully you can come together in the mutual interests of the goals of your country is.
I agree with that.
I agree with
that notion, actually, because that's how how people should be able to get the government together like that by a compromise solution. That's the way to go. Otherwise, all the 300 million will go on 300 million ways, and that's no way to get a government. Because what I'm looking at, when you have a government, you have a state. That state has a responsibility to make sure that it creates an economic system so that everybody somehow benefits by getting together. That means the government has to be able to not only protect the trade between individuals, but also trade between our state and next door neighbor, for example, Mexico or China or anywhere in the world. So that way you can see how the reach of the government has to not only be within the boundaries of the nation, but also go outside, because that's where the how the companies that originate here have to trade with companies in other countries. So that's how right away you see the expanded reach of a government.
I think we as a country have drifted away from some of the things that we believed in many years ago, as far as what was taught in schools, certain things that became a tradition, kind of went by the wayside over a period of time, somewhat because people got lazy, maybe, somewhat that you integrated more and more people from different parts of the world who believe in different things. And there seems to be at the point in time when there's really no requirement of people coming from other countries to learn the cultures of in this case, our country. I mean, we have problems, obviously, but so does in France, and so does in England right now, in Germany, and a few of the other European countries in particular. And a lot of that is caused by all this immigration that's been moving around. And many of these people from some of these other countries have no desire and have let it be known that I'm not going to follow your traditions, or I got my own traditions and I'm going to build on those. All that stuff adds strife into the overall country.
But
Let
a
me
lot
make one comment on that. Being an immigrant myself, that to be a legal immigrant, it takes a long time, and you have to learn the different nuances of the society, because you have to go through classes to learn about the government, and then you begin to integrate. Otherwise, you're not going to benefit, and you're not going to contribute in a good way to the welfare and benefit of the society and the government here. And I take it, and I don't take anything for granted. When you are doing legal immigration, you have to go through all that so that you become part of the society. But that's why I also say that it is the way the onslaught of the immigrant, well, it's not immigrants actually, the onslaughts of people coming through the border is happening. That should be fixed, and that we don't have any excuse for that unless it is the malfunction of the government or the leadership who do not want to, who, because of maybe political reasons or non-political reasons, I don't know, do not want to invest in the actual problem and solving the problem. And I would greatly like that.
Well, can I go back just for a moment? Basically, I agree with Omanon, but at the same time, we've had many waves of immigration in the United States in the 200 and some odd years that we've been around. And if we stayed with the original people who came, we'd all be Anglican, we'd all be farmers, we would all be under a lord. We've adapted to different groups. Pizza is not something that came with the Pilgrims. Pizza showed up, I think the first time I ever had a pizza was about 70 some odd years ago, and I thought it was fairly new at that point. Corned beef and cabbage goes back even further. Given time, the cultures of the various groups that came not only become part of our culture, but we adapt aspects of their culture.
But they're not going to be coming. Their culture's not going to help. They're not going to learn a lot by just what we're bringing in a pizza or whatever else food type of products. It's much more important than that, Bob.
No, but I'm just using it as a simple example. There's a whole bunch of things.
It was simple.
And by the way, some of it, Texas, what we call Texas today, was a province of Mexico. and it was
And what was it?
conquered.
What was it before it was Mexico?
Before it was Mexico, it was Spain, and before that, it was Native American Indian, and before that, God knows, I don't know. I haven't gone back that far.
So so what's your point about
My point
Mexico?
being, we absorb and hopefully take the best, or at least some, from the people who are coming in who at the same time are adapting to us. Tacos is something that is relatively recent in the northern part of the United States, but existed back 200 years ago in Texas as being a standard food. And I use food because everybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't have example of laws that came out. Well, I do have a Napoleonic Code. A lot of our laws came out of the Napoleonic Code, which was after we established our country.
Omanon, what are some of the things you had to learn when you came into this country?
Everything. How does it go? You go through it. You go through tests. How does the government run? What is the judiciary? How does the Supreme Court get done? How do laws get done? All the civic society running? I mean, you have to learn and learn. Otherwise, you flunk. You're done.
So that what you're just saying now, I agree with. Do you see a difference? What's going on the last 20 years?
Well, of course, things are evolving. I like the phrase what Bob pointed out, because over time you do get different people, and you adopt some and you give some to them. And I'm reminded, day before a few days ago, we had a University of Massachusetts Medical School. One of the scientists got Nobel Prize in medicine, and he talked about Dr. Ambrose, and his discovery is fundamental in various therapies which is coming up. But what was really which I didn't know, which he mentioned, that he would not have been here had his father, who was a war refugee, not been brought here because of a GI person, a soldier during World War II, who sponsored him. So his father came as a war refugee, and then his mother, I forgot the mother part there, but both of them, they came as refugees, and because of them, he, of course, he's a citizen here. He was born here, and he got educated here. Went to all the top schools, and now he got a Nobel Prize.
And I'm
So
sure his
he
mother and
mentioned
father,
that.
I'm sure his mother and father followed the rules and regulations when they
Yes.
first came here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. His father was sponsored by a soldier in he is from Poland. He has Polish ancestry, and I thought that was interesting that he brought that up while talking about his Nobel Prize.
Yeah, so his father and mother didn't sneak over the border.
No, that's why. Exactly, but they did not sneak over, because that was, I mean, most of the time I would favor that. It takes time, but that way you get to learn everything. You are not only you get to learn, you have to learn. Otherwise, you are nowhere. That's a tidbit I just wanted to point out.
Very good.
Another viewpoint is the rules are different, and up until a few years ago, it may still be true, but I know 5-10 years ago this was true. The majority of the undocumented, the illegal immigrants to the United States were people who overstayed their visas or their green cards, etc. They weren't people who snuck across the border. That people who were sneaky across the border and been doing it for a couple hundred years.
But those ones that let their visas expire, they're not lawbreakers.
Yes. Yes, they are, because the rules were fairly specific, and for whatever reason, they did not follow them. But to take and say the only people who are here illegally are people who came across the southern border, primarily Spanish speaking, is not is not correct. It's not factual.
Well, I don't think we said that.
Well, I've been listening to the anti-immigrant debate for many, many years, and that seems to be the standard.
Well,
So I
that's
apologize
the
if
majority of them.
I,
That's the
yeah.
majority of them are who are coming over. Are that's what they are. They're not visa overstayers.
Well, up until fairly recently, the ones who were here were visa overstayers.
Some of them.
Well, the majority, and this
No,
goes back
no,
10
no.
years ago or
I
something.
would not. I would not agree with that. Not the majority.
How do you know?
Well,
How do I know?
Yeah.
I don't know, but common sense would tell me that if you're talking about millions of people who are in this country supposedly illegal, that the vast majority of them are not visa. So I mean, we can do some research and verify what that number is. I'm sure it's less than 10% of visas. But we'll put that on Bob to be able to prove that visas are the number one.
Well, again, I said a while back, I don't know if it's still
Okay,
true.
well,
Yeah,
20 years ago or 30 years ago, or what? 5 years ago?
I'll
What do you
say
wanna
10.
pick? 10, okay.
Well, if along this southern border, I just wanted to point out that the major problem is that there are several problems. One is that we have to deal with the actual problems that are actually running through Central America, and for that, United States can do something to prevent this migration from happening in this way. Number two, there is also this it has become a trade, it has become a business, so they have to crack down on those not only the what is called the coyotes, but also the bigger fish who actually recruit all these people from all over the world and ship them to South America somewhere, and then tell them how to get here on Google Maps. And this, I mean, that is a major problem as a society, as a government which is dedicated to protecting the borders. They have to think out of the box to do something about that.
Who are some of these? Who might you think some of these? I don't know if it's say people, but possibly organizations that are helping that.
I have no idea. That's what.
No idea
that's
at
why,
all. You don't know. Maybe Catholic charities may be part of that.
I have no idea. But
Okay,
the government should do something about it.
I think it's
There's a bunch of NGOs, non-government organizations that are helping make this happen.
And they may be doing it for all the moral reasons.
Yeah, I think more of it's because it puts money in their pocket.
no,
But
no.
what I was actually
they're-
referring.
what they're doing is once they're here, they're helping them. They're not recruiting them to come.
I don't believe you're correct, Paul. I believe that some of what you're saying is correct, but I think you're giving them too much benefit.
I mean, I don't know myself, but what I was thinking is
What
there
would be
are-
the
I have-
motivation?
I have.
What would be the motivation for them to recruit illegal aliens? I can't
Because they're going
understand
to be
that.
paid. Because they're going to be paid. These
By
people
whom?
that are coming over. These people that are coming over the border. Many of them are paying a fee to be able to cross the border.
Yes.
And they're paying these different NGOs, in many cases, certain amounts of money. And it's pretty stiff in some cases. It can be thousands of dollars per person.
Thousands of dollars so that you can walk for 1,000 miles? Does that seem
It doesn't
reasonable?
matter.
And
If you're desperate enough, and you're convinced that that's the only way you're going to survive long term, is this glorious country up ahead, and whatever these people may be being told, that they don't know in many cases just how difficult a task it may be to travel all that distance.
One of the things that, if in fact there is NGO or something that is sponsoring them, organizing them, they're also feeding them for multiple months while they're doing this. So maybe the money, that and paying the guide, who I'm sure does okay, is where whatever money they get goes. One of the things that Trump keeps saying is only the bad people come, everybody else stays. But factually, if what you say is true, if somebody pays an organization to help them get to our border, they must have had a fair amount of money to start with. So chances are they're not.
A lot of cases, when they get to this country, if they haven't paid their fee, they're put into servitude. What do you think could happen to these 320,000 kids that are missing? That our country doesn't know where most of these kids are.
Ask Donald Trump.
Some of these kids are being trafficked in sex trades. Other ones are being put to work in various business places to pay that money back.
I'm sure that there's a fair amount of that going on, but I'm also sure that the vast majority of people who come across, children as well as adults, come across and are trying to find family where they've been told, if you can get to X, Boston, New York, Albuquerque, you know, or we know people who will help you. And that's where they go. And those families, in most cases, not all, are taking care of these people. Some of them are doing trafficking. Human beings come in a variety of different stripes, not all of which are laudable. But I think the vast majority, there is factual, again, statistics which say when somebody comes across the border and they say, I'm asking for asylum, and the Border Patrol says, okay, you need to be at this place at this time for adjudication, and that may be X number of years in the future. The vast majority of these people show up where they're supposed to be. Now, if the majority of people coming across are being trafficked, they can't show up. They don't have the freedom to show up. So obviously there's some question as to whether a great majority of these people are being trafficked. I think some are, without question. But it's, again, the number. And maybe if our rules were a little bit more intelligent,
in this country we're allowed to believe. In this country, we're allowed to say and believe whatever we want. So you can have your beliefs, Paul can have his, Omanak can have his, and I'll have mine.
Okay.
And you want to take the time to validate your statements. That's great, and I'll try to do the same on mine.
Okay.
Bob.
Speaking of being
some
able
point in
to,
time, maybe we can get a chance to compare those statements.
sounds like a good idea, but let me throw out something having to do with we can say whatever we want. One of the things that's going on today while we are speaking is there are people who are saying FEMA is not doing anything to help you. FEMA is going to seize your property. FEMA gave you $750. That's all you're ever going to see. They're never going to help you in the future. They're saying they, and depending upon who you talk to, they can be a different group, are causing the weather. They are directing the weather in order to hurt Republican things. This is, I believe, yelling fire in a crowded auditorium.
And I want to go back to say that I just think I remember hearing years ago that statement is no longer valid. And I just came across it recently again, and I thought for sure to remember where I saw that I'm gonna have to look that up again. I thought there was a court ruling on that. I may be wrong, but I'm gonna look that up further. But the fact is that, yeah. So you're saying you're
What's
not.
the fact? I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're talking about. What
Well, I'm
fact are you
saying this.
talking about?
I'm saying that you said, Paul, earlier, you can't say fire in a movie theater. And Bob just said the same thing. I'm just saying, I believe I heard some time ago somebody of greater intelligence than speaking, saying that that's has no longer been a valid thing, and valid statement. And I just came across something in the last few weeks. Somebody else stating or writing something about that, and it just backed up what I thought I had heard. Unfortunately, I don't remember where I saw that. I'll have to do some research to see if I'm right or wrong. That's what I said.
I will ask John. John keeps up with stuff like this. So I'll ask him, and maybe he
Well,
can direct us.
that's fine.
Okay.
But I want to go back on what you were saying. Part of the reason I said what I said, because I was hoping maybe somebody like you would say what you just said, as far as speaking what somebody you don't agree with them saying whatever they said. So you're saying you don't have freedom of speech in this country, whether you think it's right or wrong?
If I were to say Chuck Beauregard is a serial rapist and say it long and loud, there might be someone.
I have a right to sue you.
Yes, you do, but someone in your community may decide that this is true and you may suffer because of it. By the way, that's why you sue me, because of
that gives me more and more ability to sue you, more than what you initially.
Well,
Not if you're dead. Not
Right.
if this person says, "No,
Well,
he's a
then
terrible person," and shoots you.
Then my relatives will sue you.
what? But the point being,
Let's use a better
no,
example
but
than that.
that's what's happening. There are people.
You exaggerated a few moments ago, and I don't know exactly where you got your exaggeration. This thing about $750, I heard that said many times,
Right.
And not once did I hear that was all the money that people were going to get.
That is what people are being told in North Carolina, particularly.
You can prove that. Can you prove that?
I can show
Are
you
taking
news
the word
reports.
of somebody else?
I can give you news reports. I was not there when somebody told somebody in North Carolina.
So you're passing on hearsay.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay,
You're
you were just
absolutely
trying
right.
to use an example. You were just trying to use an example about something happening to me, or something based upon something you said.
I was trying to throw out something that brought it closer to home. By the way, have either you or I seen 1 million people crossing the southern border? Have either you or I seen any of these people being trafficked, sex or work or whatever? We are passing
I have
on.
I have to make a judgment myself whether or not the information I'm getting sounds valid.
Okay.
Is it probable?
Okay, now we're in agreement. And what I'm saying is news reports, and admittedly it's news reports because I wasn't there, are telling that people are coming to believe. And by the way, our politicians who represent us, who are trying to organize relief to help the people who have been badly injured through the storms, are saying, people are saying this, and they're trying to tell everybody it ain't true. Now, again, I don't know. I do know that the year after Katrina, my basement flooded, and I had all kinds of mold and a whole bunch of other things, and I contacted FEMA, and they fixed this stuff, and it cost me relatively little out of pocket. So I know FEMA has in the past done a great deal more than sending a check for $750, which, by the way, is really a good thing to do, because while we're adjudicating and trying to figure out what it's going to cost to fix my house, I still got to eat. I still got to buy medicines, etc. So
Did you hear hear the Mallorca say that FEMA does not have enough money, doesn't have much money or any money to be able to pay for future hurricanes?
what he said was they can deal with the current weather issues as far as direct aid. They need more money from Congress. It's not that we'll never see the money ever. They need Congress to approve more money so that they were going to be able to deal with all the longer range repairs.
Yeah.
So that's what he said. And I actually heard that.
That's word for word.
I doubt it's word for word, but I did hear him speaking and saying basically those things. Again, I can't quote because I'm 80 years old. My memory is not that good anymore.
But it's absolutely logical. Since we've had two major storms, we've had other storms, but now we've had two very major storms, Helene and this Milton. Congress needs to vote to give more money to FEMA so that they can do things.
And where are we
They
supposed to
have
get
a limited budget, and when they run out of that limited budget, they can't send any more money.
Yeah, the law says they can't.
Where is some of that money that FEMA has or had? Where's that going?
It's already spent.
Where's that spent to? Has any of that gone
All
to
the other things that have happened.
has that gone to overseas countries?
No,
No,
because it comes out of a different account. You ran a store, a restaurant. There were accounts. You paid
I
for
know,
things
Bob.
through.
I know, Bob.
Yeah, no, I'm telling our audience of two. You took money to do X out of X account, and when you ran out of that money, you had to do something else, or you had to get more money. And Congress can and will appropriate more money, but
How
they
will they
didn't
do
think
that?
they were going to have to until about a month ago
How are they going to appropriate more money?
by voting for it. That's
Even if they vote for it, where's that money coming from?
they're going to borrow it.
They're not right. They're going to print it.
No, they're going to borrow it from you
no.
and me.
no.
They're going to print it and make our.
They don't print it. The Fed prints it. The Fed
Well, whatever
writes
you
a
want.
check
Let's
and
play
gives
word,
it to
let's
Congress.
play word games.
Huh?
Let's play word games.
It's not weird. The way banking works, every bank works like this. I deposit my money in there for safety. They take that money and they lend it to somebody at a rate of interest with fees, etc. And that's how they make money. But they lend out 3 or 4 times how much money I deposited. I don't remember what the multiplier is.
10.
10 times?
10.
Almost done?
Huh?
Are we done? Oh, okay. Our director
How do we
just
get to be about $35 trillion in debt?
because
I,
we've been borrowing money. And
can I ask
yeah.
one question, please?
Sure.
Chuck said that there is no money and all that, but my question is the people who are ravaged by the hurricane. What are we going to do? Don't we want to help them? I mean, should we say, okay, go and get killed, or you lost it? It's your problem.
No, we have to help them.
Yes.
And it's a matter of what's the best way to do that.
But if FEMA is the agency that is supposed to help them, FEMA does not have money. That means FEMA has to be authorized by Congress to get money. That means Congress has to act.
That's my question. My question is, where's Congress going to get that money from?
But
I
that's
just answered
Congress's
that
problem.
question. They're going to get it from the.
Problem.
They're going
Yes,
to get it.
that's true.
They're going to get it from the Fed. That's a group that creates money.
Right.
They
got
have
a
a-
big
they have a
printing
check-
press.
They have a checkbook. They write a check for $1 billion, and give it to Congress after Congress passes a law that says they want it. And so then that money gets distributed. Now, the other question you're asking is, where did this come from? Did the Fed have the money to begin with? And the answer is no. They just simply have a checkbook without any money in it, but they just create it as they